All right, so if you could just go ahead and start with your decision today and a little background on what led you to commute Tina Peters' sentence.
Yeah, so today I issued nine commutations and 25 pardons. A commutation is somebody who is serving a sentence. In many cases, it's a sentence that's too long. There's a disparate sentence. One person I commuted, for instance, committed what's called felony murder, which means you were there with the murderer when they committed the murder. That used to be under Colorado law, punished the same as the murder itself. I signed a law a few years ago that has a different punishment for felony murder than the actual person who pulls the trigger. So that doesn't apply retroactively. So I'm acting, for instance, with a commutation on that. There's two others that have committed heinous crimes involving second degree murder. They've had long track records and they had life without parole and they'll get paroled at some future date. One of the nine, the only non-violent offender, on there because of her unusual sentence is Tina Peters, who got a 9-year sentence. Very unusual for a first-time nonviolent offender. And this is also a case where the president has issued a bogus pardon because this president cannot pardon a state level crime. I continue to refuse to pardon Tina Peters. I did look at, like any other applicant, the sentence. It is too long of a sentence for the crime she committed. And what the appeals court found I agree with. It was a panel of three judges that basically said she's being punished for her speech. She, and she has crazy viewpoints, conspiratorial viewpoints that are not accurate, not true. But that is not a crime in our country or in our state. You're allowed to believe whatever you want to believe and say what you want to say. She should not have received an additional punishment because of that. I'm cutting her penalty in half, 4.5 years instead of 9. She'll be paroled shortly. She's 70 years old. She has apologized for her crime, admitted her mistake, and I think as a state, we need to move past this.
I'm sure you've heard the response from Secretary of State Griswold and some of the county clerks who just immediately kind of came out with their own, they organized and came out with their response, saying that they're furious, they're disgusted, they feel like this undermines their work. Do you want to respond to their claims that this is you caving into political pressure from President Trump?
Well, it's bizarre because the political pressure is all from the other side saying don't do it, as you're seeing from various people. So that's the political pressure. But when it's the right thing to do, I feel it's important to do anyway. So despite the political pressure, it's absolutely a core tenet that people should not be penalized for free speech. They should be penalized for the crimes they commit. A fair and just, in fact, a tough sentence is 4.5 years for what she did. Her conspirators who did the same thing. One got 6 months, one got parole only. And she, poorly defended herself. She talked about all of her crazy beliefs. And unfortunately, the judge also cited those beliefs that she has in the sentencing that was really beyond the pale for the crime she committed. I'm adjusting that today. And I hope that this inspires more confidence in our judicial system, as well as, frankly, more confidence in our election system. If people disagree with how things are being done, they should debate them. They should discuss them. They shouldn't be scared to say, I want to make sure that's correct. They should be able to say that. Now, when you cross the line and commit a crime, you should be punished, as Tina Peters has been. And of course, these 4 felonies will remain on her record for the rest of her days.
Did you have any discussion with Trump, or did he call you when you made the decision before it was shared publicly?
No, I have not heard, nor do I expect to hear from the president. He has a very different position. He wants this person pardoned. I strongly disagree with that. We'll continue to aggressively defend the invalidity of his pardon in court. It'll likely be heard by the Supreme Court next year. I think his comments on the case are not coherent. He gets her age wrong, her crime wrong. I've heard from thousands of Coloradans. Many of them have opinions across the board. Some think she shouldn't have been convicted at all. I disagree with them. Some land where I landed that she should have been convicted, but should have gotten a more reasonable sentence. Others believe she should serve more time, even than she was convicted for, because she's a symbol in many ways. They view her as a symbol of what's wrong with our country, what's wrong with our state. It's very dangerous to adjudicate people based on being a symbol. Every case deserves looking at it based on the merits.
One thing that was brought up in that previous press conference was how this might impact your political aspirations. That this is going to ruffle some feathers with your fellow Democrats. Did that play a role in this decision? What your fellow Democrats were how they were going to respond to this?
Well, first of all, I think this is part of the problem here. I mean, there should be no democratic viewpoint on a pardon. None of the pardons that we look at are through a partisan lens, and in no other case have members of one party or the other, disagreed because they're members of that party. I mean, there's individuals that agree or disagree with many of the commutations or pardons I've done over the years, but the fact that there is a party, one of two major ones, one I happen to be a member of, that seems to be worked up about this is in fact itself evidence that political speech is at play, and really confirms the need for this decision to say this should be a crime that's prosecuted and sentenced on the merits of the crime without political considerations for the what I agree is really terrible way her belief system. I completely disagree with her beliefs, but even if you believe the world is flat, you shouldn't get a harder sentence because of that. It needs to be done in a consistent and fair way that everybody can have confidence in, regardless of what you believe.
If and you can stop me if I'm just, reading too much in between the lines here, but do you feel like some of these other leaders are using this as their way to, push their political aspirations?
Well, again, part of the beauty of free speech is that everybody can share what they think about everything. And that's wonderful. And that includes elections and that includes pardons and commutations. And that's what I hope to protect through this order. Nobody should ever be criminally punished or targeted out or sentenced differently because of their free speech. So I'm protecting some of that very free speech, whether they agree with me or disagree with me.
I think that's it. Is there anything you wanted to add? I covered everything that I had written down here.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank
you know what? One quick question.
yeah.
Why not wait until the appeals court made their decision on the sentence?
So I was considering this, and people know I have for some time. I did wait until the appeals court found and made their decision that, in fact, there were considerations of her speech in the unduly long sentence that she acquired. The order for resentencing is not likely to occur anytime in the near future because the whole matter is subject to additional legal steps and appeals. And by the time that's heard by the state Supreme Court or even U.S. Supreme Court, she would have long been out anyway because she would be paroled in the next year and a half, regardless of what I do. So it's really not something that could be done unless I took it upon myself to say I read the appeals court decision. It's what I thought before, but it really said it much more eloquently, and I'm going to act on it to effectively resentence her.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you so
Thank
much. Let me
you.
hit